Bill felt the offensive line was one of the most important positions on your roster because of your team, because it permeated the building. And so he didn't say it had to be done in the draft or in free agency, but he just felt like that position group was important. And I think regardless of his philosophy and my exposure to Bill, I think when George and I started, I think one of the areas, and George even had mentioned this in an earlier press conference prior to free agency, that was a focus for us in upgrading and getting our team better. But yeah, what I learned from Bill, I couldn't talk about in just one question or one press conference. There were certain things he'd look for. I thought he was someone who was obviously a Hall of Fame head coach, but a real good personnel guy. He enjoyed that process. There were certain prototypes he looked for at positions, and I think the one thing he was really good at, he enjoyed those afternoons, sitting in a room, discussing players. And when you're young, like I was, like a young coach, listening to the interaction between him and the GM. And, there's certain things you learn over a period of time. And having spent 3 years there, I think that time frame helped me going forward. And so both George and I have been fortunate to be around some people that we worked for at Young. When he mentions Nick Saban or influences that help shape you, you're really lucky, I think, if you have some of those guys in your bloodlines. But yeah, I think Bill looked at the offensive line, obviously, with great significance. We all do, but he looked at certain things pertaining to that group. He had certain requirements. The thing to understand when you talk about prototypes, though, is you really have to start with the defense and offense that you're projecting these players to. And so we oftentimes talk about what's the vision for these guys. Are we looking at a nickel or a corner? Are we looking at a slot receiver? Do we think he can play outside? So having a clear vision, I think, is important. And that takes time in the meetings. It's easy to look at the key plays or the highlights. You guys might have an opinion on some players in this draft, and they're probably based off of maybe 15 or 18 snaps. For us, last night we probably watched 1,200 snaps of 3 players, and almost going back even a season ago, because you really are trying to get the totality of what's coming in the building.